Now that you've gone through the tutorial to basically begin to understand how you animate in an action, or what all the tools are, we're actually going to go through in an action and create an animation. So um, if you haven't done so already, load the ball from the content on your DVD. Maybe copy it to your desktop and load it from there, or wherever you'd like, and then double click on actions to create a new action with the shortcut to ball in it. Now I'm going to start out using the graph editor, so make sure I clicked right here. And a lot of the moving tools are the same in bones or animation mode as it is in modeling mode. So I'm going to click this bone, and I'm going to, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it. So I'm going to go hit N on the keyboard, and then I'm going to move it right over here. Now I'm in front view. I hit 2 on the numpad to do that. So here's my ball, and I'm starting out right here. If you can see in the graph editor here, now under Translate, I have keyframes now on X, Y, and Z. Now you can notice the keyframe is at 100 centimeters, and I just want to make sure that's a flat 100. Oops, negative 100. So I just bring it over there. Okay. Now you'll notice that these 3 keyframes are set. If I hit Translate, you'll notice I've got X, Y, and Z all set here at 0. So now I want to move out to, I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to use even numbers here. I'm going to go to frame 4, and now that I've keyed the translation, I can make sure I'm in key model and hit force keyframe, and you'll notice it created another keyframe there. Now this will be the start of the bounce. So I'm going to go out to frame 10, and I'm going to create another keyframe. Go to frame 16, create another keyframe. Go to frame 20 and create another keyframe. Now I've got those 4 keyframes set. Now you'll notice that I can scrub up here too. But I usually scrub down here just because I like to be able to go exactly to the frame that I want. So these 3 keyframes, all I've done is I've set up a basic way of setting up how I animate. This is going to be the beginning of the jump, or the beginning of the bounce, the top of the bounce where it hits the ground, and then the resolution, or the just follow through. So here is my translation. If I go to the beginning of the jump, I want it to be the exact same thing, so I just leave it there. The middle of my jump, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on right here the manipulator properties, and I'm going to go to 0 on the X, but then in the Y, or actually in the Z, because this is showing me the bone translate, or the bone space. In the Z, I'm going to move it up, and I'll just move it up about here. Actually, I'll go up to 80, right there. Now you can see if I go to my translate X in this direction, it's moving here and then it goes back. Now watch. It goes up and back, so I don't want it to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this keyframe, and instead of negative 100, I'm going to go 100. Okay. Now what you've noticed here in the graph editor, and then here too, I'm going to go 100. Now you'll notice in my graph editor that these by default do like a 0 slope or an ease in, ease out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab them by highlighting them, right click, go to interpolation method, and go to spline. So it just smoothed them out into spline. But now you'll notice that because I'm in spline mode, make sure I have my bias button checked here, and my bias keyed, and slider, and etc. You'll notice that it actually goes below and then goes above right here. Now what I really want it to do is I want it to be flat and then go up and then flatten out again. And by really easily doing that, all I have to do is click on this CP and then hit P to peak. Click on this one, hit P to peak. Now you see automatically what it did is it changed the bias to be a broken handle, and it peaked that. If I want to go back, I just select it and hit O. Select it and hit O. So now you can see the bias is back the way it was. But I'm just going to select it and hit P. Select it and hit P. So now you'll notice it just does a straight shot from here to here. Okay. So now that I've got that taken care of, I want to go to my translate Y. Nothing happens on my translate Y, mainly because I'm working in my XZ plane and I don't have any need to use that. So now I go to my Z. Now my Z is the up down. Usually Y is up down, but because my bone is pointed straight up and down, the Z goes down the bone. So that is the Z, as you can see right here. That Z means that the bone is pointing in that direction. So the Z is what I want to work with here. Now, I want the ball to take off quickly and land, but I don't want it to ease in and ease out. I want it to be very kind of a harsh takeoff, quick takeoff. So I'm going to grab it and I'm going to hit P. Actually, before I do that, select all, interpolation method, spline. Now you'll notice I hit P on this one, so it basically did that, but this is what it would do with all spline. It now goes down and then up and then down, but I don't want it to do that, so I'm going to click here, hit P, click here, hit P, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through some CP settings. I'm going to grab this CP, right click on it, say CP settings. Now this opens up whatever the properties are for that individual point. My time is absolute. I want it exactly on a keyframe, so it's on frame 10. My value is absolute. I want it to be 80 centimeters, so that's fine. My interpolation method, I can set it right here. Peaked, I can change it here or not. But bias is what I want to play with. What I could do, let me cancel that for a second, is grab this and move it out a little bit and pull it, but I'm not really getting it exactly how I want. So instead of doing that, I'm going to right click on it, go to CP settings, and then magnitude, I'm going to say 150 on the in bias, and right click CP settings, 150 on the out. So now you can see what it did is it did it proportionally, so it's nice and flat still. Now these two also, I want it to take off. See how it kind of arcs into that jump. I'm going to grab it and I'm just going to move that up like this. Now what I'm going to see is my gamma and my magnitude. I'm basically going to worry about both of them. I'm going to copy this and hit OK. I'm going to go here, right click on it, CP settings, gamma, hit paste, OK. And then I'm going to go back here, right click, CP settings, magnitude, copy, OK. This one, oh, excuse me, I've been doing it wrong. Because this is my in, I want to paste it there. So then I'm going to go back here, copy this, OK, and then paste it on the in because it's on the in. So then I hit OK. Actually, I needed to do that negative. Ah! Well, sometimes AM doesn't agree with you. Anyways, I could do it either way. I could put in the numbers manually, or I could just click and drag. And this time I'm going to choose to just click and drag. So I'm going to do this and do that. Now I've got a good curve for a bounce. Okay, so now not only is it bouncing really smooth, but I'm also translating nice and smooth. So I basically got my translations in exactly where they need to be. So if I go to my translate, you can see all of the keys together, the X, Y, and Z, and they are where I need them to be. So now let's move on to rotations. Remember when in the bouncing ball tutorial, I guess if you will, in the classic bouncing ball tutorial, my ball is going to start out here, it's going to stay there, and jump up to here and come back down. Now this isn't going to be a spinning ball, this is going to be more like it's an actual character. If I was going to do a spinning, I would do the rotations differently, but I'm actually going to do it like a character, like as if it was jumping and not rolling. So my keyframes right here and right here are just fine, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my rotate, I'm going to click on it, and you'll notice that no keyframes are set. Scale, same thing, we'll worry about that in a minute. I'm going to go to rotate. Now in rotate, instead of hitting N up here, I'm going to hit R. Now you can see on my rotations, I'm going to hit 0 here, 0 here, and 0 here. Now one thing you will notice is for some reason you can't see the rotations when they're single. If you click on X, Y, and Z, like in Translate, X, Y, and Z, you can see that. For some reason the X, Y, and Z don't work in the Rotate. Rotate only works when you select all of them. It's kind of problematic, and it's just a quirk of Hash. Hopefully in the future versions they've fixed. But in 11.1, which is what I'm working in, that's just kind of the way it is. So now I have keyframes set for each one of that for X, Y, and Z rotations. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Transform, and I'm going to go to here, and then I'm going to do the same thing. So 0, 0, and 0. I'm going to go to here, do the same thing, 0, 0, and 0. Go to here, do the same thing, 0, 0, and 0. And then go to the end and say 0, 0, and 0. Okay, so now I have the keyframe set for all the rotations. Now, one way that I could have done it is once I set that first keyframe, I could have unselected everything except for rotation, and then I could have forced a keyframe here, 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 and here. So let me do that really quick just so you can see it. I'm going to delete all of those. So I just have that. Now I'm going to hit Transform. I'm going to go to here, force a keyframe, force a keyframe, force a keyframe, and force a keyframe, because it was only on rotation. Now the problem with this is that if I forget to do only rotation and I have scale and translate, if I go to Transform, what I might do is hit this and see how it changed the interpolation of the graph. For some reason it does that when it forces a keyframe, probably because it resets that frame. So I'm actually going to undo that. So once again, I'm going to take those off, and I'm just going to force a keyframe just on rotations. Okay. So now that I have my rotations set, my rotation here at my first frame is going to be 0. This is going to be 0. This is going to be 0. This is going to be 0, and this is going to be 0. The reason why these are all 0 is because right here I'm going to have it squashed down. Right here I'm going to have it straight up and down, kind of in its neutral position. This is squashed down, and then this is a resolution. Rotations, I'm going to go to the first frame right after the take, or right after the squash, and that's where I'm going to rotate it out about 20%. Okay. Now I'm going to go to one frame behind the land, and I'm going to rotate it backwards. Oops. Negative 20%. Okay. Okay, so now you see how the rotations are working. But notice the graph, how it's that flat line. I'm going to make sure that I've got Smart Force Key off. That's why it was doing that. So I'm going to undo those keys. Go back here and I'll show you the difference. So remember, when we had Smart Force Key on, it was automatically going to like a 0 slope or an ease in. So I'm going to go here, go one keyframe over, and go 20. Here's fine, and then I'm going to go here and go negative 20. Now you notice it kind of did it again, so it's kind of a hit and miss, but I'm going to select all of these for my rotations, and I'm going to right click and say spline. Now you'll notice a smooth spline, but you'll notice how this right here kind of dips in a bit, kind of does a little anticipation. That's actually kind of nice. I would kind of like to keep that. I may make it a little more intense, but as for right now, I'll just leave it the way it is. So we'll just leave those rotations the way they are, like this. So that finishes my rotations. So I've got the translation and rotation going. And now what I want to move on to is scale. So I want to do the squash and stretch. Okay, so I want to do the squash and stretch, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set my scale at 100. I'm just going to click it, hit enter, enter, enter. That sets a keyframe for scale X, Y, and Z on 0. Now I'm going to go back, click on transform, And right here is where I want my first squash. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to squish my ball down, but I want to keep the volume of it, so I have to be careful. Now I'm going to click the bone, hit S on the keyboard. My X scale, I'm actually going to go to about 150%. My Y scale, 150%. Now this is going to be a little exaggerated, but that's okay. And my Z scale is 50%. So it squishes down but out. Now you can see I set a keyframe on this so it goes down first. Now I'm going to click my transform again to go to the middle, and I'm going to set it at 100, 100, and 100. So this is my neutral position. Then I'm going to go to my next one and do the same thing. So this is 150, 150, and oops, 50. So my squish, and then back to right here, 100, 100, and 100. Okay, so now what you can see is squish down, but it's squishing down and it's staying down while it's jumping. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is click on the bone and go to this keyframe right here, the one right after the squish. I'm actually going to hit S on the keyboard, and then I'm going to, in my X, I'm going to actually go to about 60%, 60%, and then my Z, I'm actually going to make it about 150. Well, let's go 130. Okay? So now it jumps off like that. Okay? And then it goes to 100, and then comes back here. Now the one right after it lands, or right before it lands, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go up over here, and I can just then set the same keyframe. So it was 60, 60, 130. So I'm going to go right here and go 60, 60, 130. Okay, so now I have it squished down, jump, reach, and hit the ground again. So I get a nice squash and stretch with a little bit of bounce in it, a little anticipation right here, boing, and then comes back down, hits the ground, squishes. Now, I'm pretty much done with that bounce, but I want to add a little bit of stuff to it, a little bit of some extra at the end, because I want it to feel like it's a bouncy ball, not just like it bounces and just stops, like a ball of clay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that bone, and you notice here how in my transforms I've got all my keys set, and the bounce looks pretty good. But what I want to do now is I actually want to grab these keyframes and copy and paste them. And it's actually very easy. I love it in Animation Master how you copy and paste. Having to do it in Maya and other packages has been just a bear. So I love in Animation Master how I can copy and paste. I don't have to have anything selected. I can go to that keyframe, make sure my branch is on, and make sure all my translations or transforms are keyed down. You can just hit copy and scroll out a little bit, hit paste, scroll out a little further and hit paste. Now what this did is, because it's a spline, it automatically creates an overshoot where it goes up a little bit, comes back down, and then settles in. Boom. Now I can make that a little bit more. I'm actually going to go to the scale, and you can notice here how this one right here, I'm actually going to grab it and drop it down a little bit, and then I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to move it up just slightly. Same thing with this. Move it down a little bit. This one, move it up a bit, and Z, same thing. This one, move it down, and this one, do that. So it doesn't flatten out right here. Now you can see it exaggerates a lot more when it hits, overshoots, comes back down, and settles in. So here's my bounce, and it just settles in there. Now one of the nice things about Animation Master, like I said, copying and pasting is so nice. And now if I go to my dope sheet, you'll notice this. This shows me all my keyframes for my transforms. So on my transforms, if I take this down, this will show me these are all the keyframes I have on my transforms. And then this will show me on my translate, on my scale, and on my rotate. If I open those up, it shows me, and like I said, rotate doesn't like to show, but scale, I can see all these. My translate, I can check all of them, X, Y, and Z. And say I wanted to lengthen it out a bit, well, I can just grab them. Hold on a sec, let me clear this out. Sometimes the timeline likes to stick a lot of stuff in there and keep it there, so I'm actually going to shrink it down and just open it up there. Okay, so say I want to take them out a little bit, or change the timing on it. I can grab them, I can slide them around. That will do everything underneath it, so it's on the bone level. The transforms, I can just do translate if I want, so I can grab just the translation, send it out. Anything like that, I can move them around really easily. Another thing that I can do is I can grab keyframes. I can just go to here, I can hit copy, come out here and hit paste, and it just puts it in there. I can hit this one, copy, paste, paste. So I get another little bit of bounce. I can just do this all day. So whatever I've scrubbed to, whatever the tick mark is on, and I hit copy, that's what it'll copy. Now, if I don't have anything selected, it will select everything that has a keyframe on that frame and copy it. It even will copy if there's no keyframe set. So if I'm in the middle here and I go copy 12, I come out here to 4 and I paste it, it's the exact same keyframe as 12. So you don't have to have keyframes on there. It's just the data on the bone at that given time. I'm going to go back here to just bone, and I'm actually going to delete those keyframes and delete those keyframes. So now I'm back to where I was. But copying and pasting is very nice in Hash. It's one of my favorite things about animating in Hash, is being able to just go, oh, I wanted this frame, copy, go over here, paste. And it helps a lot. So working in an action, that was your basic tutorial for keyframing. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and like I said, doing everything in the graph editor is the same. The other thing about copying and pasting in the graph editor is not only can you just scrub to something and copy and then come over here and paste, but what I can do also is I can select a region. So I can grab all these, hit copy, and then come over here, and it will start them right here to paste them. So if I hit paste, you'll notice it pasted that whole section in here. So now it goes boom, slides over and does it again. Okay. So I can do that just by copying and pasting. Now one thing you have to be aware of is if I have selected something like I just did, if I go over here, even if I haven't selected anything, if I hit copy and then paste, it still pastes that. What I need to do is I need to click off the bone, click it again, and now I can just scrub here, copy, paste. Once again, another little quirk of Hash, but something that just has a workaround. So once again, if I select a chunk of keys, copy that and paste it out here, and then I get rid of them. If I want to paste anything, copy and paste anything else, I have to click off, click back on it, and then copy and paste. So that's just another little quirk of working in the graph editor that I've noticed. But it's very powerful. When you're doing something that you want to repeat, I could grab this and I could copy and then paste right at the end of it, and it would just do it over again. So I could grab this, copy, go to right here, paste, go to right here, paste, go to right here, paste. So it's starting to freak out a little bit. I think it's because I copied one too many keyframes. Let's do this. Copy, paste. Well, it's doing something weird. Um, anyways, I never really, I don't really work in chunks like this, because if I'm going to do an animation where I want something to repeat, I will do one cycle of it, save out the animation or the action file, and then load it into a choreography where I can repeat it. And so, like I said, I don't, you can do this if you want to, but I don't use it a ton. I use it for mainly just small chunks of keyframes that I want to copy and paste, but not really anything repeating. So I hope that helps for the introduction to keyframing in Animation Master. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention was you need to make sure when you're animating, whether in an action or a choreography, that when you start your animation, you set a keyframe on everything that you're going to be setting a keyframe on. Its default will start at its normal, like let me just double click an action here. If I scroll out here and I move it, you'll notice that it automatically set a keyframe at 0 at its original point. So if I want it to start out here, I can't, I have to copy that and then drag it back and paste it so that it stays there. I need to set a keyframe on the beginning, because when I don't, you'll get floating feet, you'll get floating hands. You always need to key everything on the very first frame, so that when you go and set keyframes later on in your animation, that they're receiving data from the previous keyframe and not just from 0. Many times I've seen people animating where they forget to key a foot or a hand or something like that. Then they'll go through and they'll do all these other animations, and then they'll realize they've only set a keyframe for that object here at 0 and out at 50. And so why is it when they play their animation that it's all floaty, and that you know, the hand is moving really slow out to its target at 50? It's because they never set a keyframe at 0. And I make an effort to, I set a keyframe on everything, each keyframe. So if I set a keyframe here on a character, even though I may only have moved 2 or 3 bones, I will force a keyframe on the entire model to make sure that that pose will stick at that point. So that's something to be mindful of when you're setting keyframes. So that's about it for keyframes and basic keyframing and the animation toolbar and getting used to the animation tools. So moving on, we'll talk about the different types of animation within an action. Bone animation, which is what we've been doing, and also muscle animation.